I'm Sari Mitnick, and this is Seamwork Radio, where we tell stories about the surprising ways that sewing impacts our lives. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 39. Today, we're going to be talking about how to make your clothing last longer with creative mending and reuse. So this month, the Seamwork theme is lasting. We've got a whole issue of the magazine dedicated to that theme. You guys can check it out. It's at seamwork.com. And today, we're going to be talking about ways that you can make your clothes last with mending and a few other ideas that we came up with to kind of make things last longer. So a while back, I wrote this post on the Seamwork community about this jacket that I bought online on eBay. It's an older Pendleton jacket, and it had a hole in the upper breast area. So kind of like around where you'd put a brooch, I guess. Not on the lapel, but on the chest area. And I wasn't really sure how to fix it because it was a weird little hole, and the fabric of the jacket was like a wool plaid, this really pretty kind of light colored wool plaid. And I got so many really fun recommendations on different ways that I could fix this jacket. And I haven't done any of them yet. I will be honest. It's been sitting there for a long time, but I wanted to share them here and share them along with some other ideas that can help you just to kind of avoid waste and get a little bit more life out of your clothes and maybe learn some new techniques. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
I'm curious, Sari, how do you feel about all the holes or tears in clothing? Or do you kind of prefer your clothing to be pristine?
You know, I was thinking about this because I kind of feel both ways. I think it really just depends on the garment and the occasion. I just think with denim and things like that, which I really love. I love kind of workwear and denim, and I do a lot of stuff outdoors, and I do a lot of gardening and things like that. And in those cases, I really think holes add a lot of character to a garment. And unless it impacts the functionality of it, I think that they can be really, part of the life of the garment. And there's a lot to unpack, I think, about why wear in clothing is seen as beautiful or seen as ugly. And I think when it comes to those more functional things, I think it just really shows the use of the garment and the life cycle of the garment. And I think that can be just a part of the story of the garment. But then I was thinking about, why is it unattractive when you see it in other types of garments? Or why does it? And I think it comes back to kind of what we talked about in our last episode. It comes back to intention and what is appropriate for different types of clothing and where you wear them. A few months ago, I was reading the book, A Year in Provence. I don't know if you've ever read that book, but it's about a British person who goes to live in Provence in France. And he goes to this party that's kind of like this fancy party, and everybody's wearing white, and this is written in the 80s, and they're all like beautiful people in these flowing white garments. And he's got these dusty shoes on, and talking about the difference between the people he encounters every day who are wearing all these, work clothes and have dirt on their clothing and under their fingernails versus these kind of rich people up in their villa. I think it's just interesting the way wear on your clothing tells a story about who you are and what you value. Yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying that. I like holes in clothing, but not all clothing.
Yeah, I think that I'm with you there. I have a denim jacket that I think I bought when I was 17, and I still wear often. And it is has one of the elbows is completely busted out, and it's kind of threadbare over some of the flat felt seams. And I kind of just love it more and more every year. It's finally starting to get to the point where I'm like, okay, I think I need to do something because I want to keep wearing it. But yeah, I think where it makes sense in those more functional garments, it does not bother me one bit. Now, when I get wine on my silk dress, then I'm pissed. But but a little hole in denim never bothered me.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's interesting to think about why holes in denim are so fashionable now. They have been at various periods. And I think, ever since the 60s, probably they've been pretty fashionable. And it's interesting to think about why that is and what that says about our culture.
Yeah, back when I used to teach sewing classes, I posted a picture of myself with a bunch of the students with their finished like pajama pants or whatever that they were making. And I was wearing like a me-made t-shirt and then ready to wear jeans that had holes in them. And this person jumped in the comments and was like, I find it really ironic that a sewing teacher would be caught dead in denim with holes in it. Good for you. I don't
Okay.
Okay. You're missing the point of this is not my jeans. It's these people who feel really good about what they just made. But okay, thanks for your feedback. But that's all to say that I think that it's very polarizing. And I think it does have a lot to do with your background and where you come from. And, you know, growing up, was raised by a single mother. We didn't have a lot of money. She would never have bought me jeans with holes in them or holes with jeans in them because that would have been, to her, might indicate to other people that she wasn't taking care of us or that we were wearing like, you know, old clothes, and I think can be a status thing and symbolizes different things to different people based on your culture, your socioeconomic background. I think that all plays into our perception of wear and tear on garments.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. It's really a matter of, well, there's those larger cultural norms, and then there's also your own personal story and your own feelings towards what your clothing represents to the world around you. That's kind of those two dimensions.
Definitely. Circling back to the mending, are you good about mending your clothing, or do you just like put it off like me?
I hate mending clothing. I don't know why. Actually, I really like the look of some of the visible mending and techniques that we're going to talk about today. I think when it's more decorative, it's more fun, I think, to do. And then it feels like a project. But the stuff that's just like fixing a hole I think a large part of that is in today's society, at least one in which I live, I have the privilege of having a lot of clothing. And I don't really necessarily need every piece of clothing that I have. So when something gets a hole in it, I can afford to put it in a mending basket and forget about it. So I think that's just something that I'm aware of, is that's really a privilege to be able to put off mending clothing and not have to do it out of necessity.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm the same. Except I'll just keep wearing it with the hole. Especially if it's like kind of like a hidden hole. I'm like, oh yeah. Reminded every time I put that jacket on, yeah, there's that little hole in the underarm. I ought to get to that at some point.
You know, I'm much better about removing stains. I don't know why. There's something satisfying about the project of removing a stain.
Well, and it's like a science experiment. Like, oh, it's a greasy stain. I got to get the dishwashing soap or the...
Yeah, all your little tips and tricks. You know?
Oh, do I? We should do an episode about that.
I do a lot of stain removal because I'm very clumsy. All right, cool. I wanted to share some of our ideas that we came up with for fixing up your clothes and making sure that they last, whether it's a stain or it's holes. We have a few ideas about that, and some of them are fun, and they might actually inspire you to actually do some more mending if you're like me and want to do something that's fun and not just something that's practical. So the first idea we have, the first tip, is just darning or mending, which can be something that can be visible or not visible. So for example, with that jacket that I mentioned earlier, like I said, it was plaid, so it had a lot going on. And one person suggested to actually take some threads from the jacket itself and use those to reweave the plaid hole, which I thought was such a cool idea. I don't know that I have the patience to do that, but it's something that would be totally possible. This jacket has pockets with the same fabric, so I could just cut a piece of the pocket out and patch that or replace part of the pocket where you wouldn't be able to see it and use those threads to reweave the actual fabric, which I think is that would be amazing.
I got chills. It's so like magical.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's like recreating a garment from the ground up.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, if you do that, props.
Kudos. Kudos to me if I do that. But there were a lot of other great ideas for doing some visible mending or some darning. And it really depends on the look that you want to go for. If you wanted it to be, to my mind, this was a little bit of like, is a blazer, so it's a little bit more of a fancy jacket. I probably wouldn't do like a patch or something on this particular one or anything that's super visible, but depending on the garment that's visible, I think visible darning and visible mending can be really cool, really interesting. And we're going to put some links in the show notes to some books that are specifically about visible mending and some ideas for doing that. So if you want to learn that, I think it's a really cool skill to have. And then sort of related to that one would be embroidery. So rather than using mending techniques, you could actually just embroider something over the hole or the stain and make it just a kind of like a cool part of the garment. You could do something like colorful flowers, or if that's not your style, if that's a little hippie-ish for you, you could do like more of a tonal embroidery. I love white work embroidery, like white on white, I think is so beautiful. And black work embroidery can be really beautiful. There's also red work embroidery. So if your garment is white, you could do any of those colors and it can look really, really classic and like an heirloom, really. So there are all different ways you can use embroidery that I think can make a garment look really beautiful and special. I think embroidered denim is really cute.
So
I'd really like it.
I have this pair of jeans that they're a little bit big for me now, but not too big that I can't wear them. And they also have the thigh holes. If you're like me, you have like big thighs that rub together. And I've been thinking, I should just like really just like deck these out with some like really groovy embroidery and just like make it a statement.
Yeah, I love that idea. I just think it looks so, I don't know, it looks so cute.
It does. Especially for summer, like these like cool embroidered jeans and like white tank top.
I think that's such a cute style. And I don't know, to me, it's timeless. I think it always looks good, but I think denim is timeless.
It is.
And then another idea could be a little bit easier is to patch it. So you could do either some visible patching or you could do more invisible patching if you've got a hole. So one idea I had that somebody suggested for that jacket also was taking a piece of leather or leatherette or something like that and patching it over the shoulder of the jacket. So sort of like a rain shield on a trench coat would be.
Oh, yeah.
And it would look more like a shooting jacket. So if you're not familiar with shooting jackets, they have a leather exterior over the one shoulder. And that's because when you're holding your rifle, it's to, I guess, to protect from the recoil or something. I don't know anything about guns. Don't care for guns, but the look is kind of like a classic kind of town and country look and would have gone well with that particular garment. But that's just an example, a really creative one I thought that came from the community on that thread.
Very Ralph Lauren.
So yeah, it's very like English countryside. So I thought that was a good example just because it's something I wouldn't have thought about on my own. And getting suggestions like that from other people is always so helpful for sparking more creative ideas for things that you thought maybe were, out of life. Yeah. So that's just one idea, but there's lots of other ways that you can patch garments. You can just use a scrap of fabric that you already have, or a cute embroidered patch, or in the case of this jacket, like I said, I could have taken a piece from the pocket. That's probably what I'm going to end up doing, actually. Take a little piece from the pocket and use that as a patch and patch it from the inside so it's less visible and try to match up the plaids. This is why I haven't done it yet. It's going to be a little bit of fussy work, but I think patching can be a great way and also looks cool on jeans. I have a denim jacket that doesn't even have any holes. It just has a lot of patches on it because I like patches.
I think you bring up an interesting point with when you're patching, considering whether you're placing the patch on top of the garment or under. I think you can do both in a way that look intentional, and patching from underneath is a really cool way to add like a pop of color or print if you're wanting it to be intentional and obviously very visible, but also is definitely the strategy if you're trying to make something blend in as much as possible.
Yeah. So those are kind of some of the sewing ideas that you can do with holes specifically, although you could also do some of these with stains. But another idea that's a little bit maybe more simple and temporary is just to cover it up with something. So you could use a pin or a scarf or whatever. I know that doesn't seem like a long-term solution, but if you like the way it looks and it allows you to keep wearing the garment instead of replacing it, then why not? It's still something that's going to keep it out of the landfill. And so there's nothing wrong with that, I think. I love scarves. I have a lot of scarves. So this is a very practical solution for me sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's also a lesson, and you don't need to overcomplicate it. Sometimes a simple solution is a good solution.
Yeah. And then if you have something that has stains, you can always dye it or you could block print it. I think we have a video on block printing, don't we, Haley, on the YouTube channel, or no?
I am pretty sure that we do. It might be in the classroom, actually. I think it's in the classroom. Sienna taught a class about block printing the quince robe.
So if you are a Steamwork member, go check that out. So block printing is, I think it's so fun. Mm-hmm. I love it. And it's actually really easy. You can make your own blocks if you want a particular print, or you can buy blocks. I have a whole bunch of blocks. I've only done it a few times, but I have, once you start buying them, they're really fun. I have one that has a tiger on it. I'm dying to use it. I really need to use that one.
Oh, that one's so cool.
Yeah. For different dyeing techniques, over dyeing it, block printing, that's a really cool thing you can do if you have a stain. You could also just refashion it. So I've done this with, for example, dresses that have a stain that I can't get out, maybe more towards the hem, you can make it shorter, or you can cut it apart and sew it to something else. So you could sew the bodice to a different skirt or make your own skirt to go on it. So there's lots of ways you can reuse parts of garments instead of getting rid of it or discarding it completely, which I think it's just something to think about as you're evaluating things that you absolutely can't get out.
Yeah.
And then kind of related to that, you could also just reuse it. So you could cut up the fabric and make it into something, or just add it to your stash for later. I think this is a really good thing to do for if you want to make some household items like pillows or accessories, or you can even turn it into part of a quilt later on. I think that's really cool. And if the garment means something to you, that can be really special to preserve something that has maybe gone beyond its useful life as a garment.
Yeah.
I really love that idea. I like that for scraps too, just things that are left over. Like if you make something really special, if you make a project that's really special and you have memories attached to it, maybe like a garment for somebody that you love or for yourself for a special occasion. I think it's so nice to use the scraps for little projects like that you'll have for a really long time and can never outgrow. And then another idea is to make some kind of a patchwork garment. So this is kind of related to refashioning, but that's just kind of one other thing you could think about is how could you turn it into more of a patchwork garment or use little bits of it in something that's pieced together. That's something that's really in fashion right now. So you see it a lot. If you do a search on Pinterest for, quilt coats and things like that, you'll see lots of patchwork. And it's not just, the hippie flowery prints of the 70s, if that's what you think of when you think of patchwork, because it's definitely what I've thought of for a long time. But there's all different kinds of styles and colors, and it can be a really cool look.
Yeah, I've even seen more minimalist versions of this kind of trend with people taking sweatshirts and cutting it right down the center, two sweatshirts, and then combining them by stitching the center front to create kind of a two-tone look. And I think that could be a really cool approach for if you have just an enormous hole that you don't want to work with or stain, a way that you can just divert a little bit of waste there.
And then if you really can't save it, if you really can't find a way to do any of this stuff with it, if you want to get the most out of it, you could also just harvest the notions before you do donate it or get rid of it or give it to somebody else, maybe somebody else who wants to use the fabric, or if you're going to recycle it somehow. So you can take the buttons off. One thing that I like to do is that if I have old bras that, obviously bras have a shelf life. There's only so long you can wear a bra before it wears out. But before you get rid of a bra, if it's not usable anymore, you can cut off the slides and the bra notions And I probably wouldn't reuse the underwire because that's probably past its shelf life by the time you're getting rid of a bra. But the other hardware, the sliders and the rings.
Yeah, the rings and then even the clasp in the back, possibly, depending on the wear on it, be harvested as well.
Yeah, and then you can use it to make your own bra later.
Which is so fun.
Yeah. Or even if you're not into making bras, I really like to use the sliders and rings on like a spaghetti strap dress or a camisole, things like that, just to make the straps adjustable. It looks good and it makes it more usable. So that's another idea, is just harvesting the notions. And if it has buttons that you love, go ahead and take those if the garment's not wearable anymore. And then the last tip, number 10, if none of these work for you, but you love the garment anyway, you could just enjoy the wear and tear and wear it anyway. We were saying that certain types of garments look great with holes, and if it's that kind of garment and maybe you're just not sure if you're the kind of person who wears holes in your clothing, try it out. There's nothing wrong with a little wear and tear. I think it can just add to the beauty and the story of your clothing. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, embrace it.
All right.
All right.
Those are all my tips. That's what we came up with.
That's a lot of really great tips. I'm going to go ahead and recap all of those. So tip number 1 is the most obvious and classic of all of the mending tips, is that you can just darn whatever the garment is. And you can take a visible approach or an invisible approach, depending on the garment and your personal taste. You can also embroider the garment. This is really good for covering a hole. Gives you a chance to add a little interfacing underneath and then just embroider away. Embroidery also can be good for covering up a pesky stain that you can't get out. Option number 3 would be to patch it. Again, this can be visible or not visible depending on your aesthetic. And don't be afraid to get creative. Sari suggested some leather or leatherette, all really great options. Tip number 4 is just cover it with a pin or a scarf or something. Your solution does not need to be a permanent solution. You can do something quick and easy just so you can continue to wear it. Tip number 5 is to over-dye or block print the garment if it has stains. Obviously, this will not help eliminate holes, but if you have a stain you can't get out, this can be a really great way to get around that. Tip number 6 is to refashion it. If it's a dress with a stain at the hem, you can just make it shorter or turn it into a top. Tip number 7 is to reuse it, cut up the fabric, put it in your stash, or make it into a household item. Tip number 8 is to make some kind of patchwork garment, or consider patchwork in general as a good way to mash up garments or create something unique. Tip number 9 is to harvest the notions if the garment is just completely not salvageable. You could always use the buttons or other notions again down the line. And tip number 10 is to just embrace and enjoy the wear and tear as part of the beautiful lifespan of this garment. So those are all really good tips. I was surprised when we were brainstorming this episode. We came up with so many.
Yeah, there are a lot of good ways to extend the life of your clothing.
Yeah, this whole time I've been thinking about a little pile that's hanging out waiting for my attention, and I'm feeling a little bit more inspired to tackle it now.
Yeah, I just think if you can do something fun with it instead of just thinking about it as a chore, then it's a lot more motivating.
Yeah, and these creative solutions do a good job at sparking a little bit more inspiration.
Yeah, for sure.
So if this is a topic that you are interested in, you should definitely check out Sari's post, How Would You Fix This Jacket? Over on the community. We will link this in the show notes, of course. And there's also so many really great books about this topic, which we are also going to link in the show notes. There is Visible Mending, A Modern Guide to Darning, Stitching, and Patching the Clothes That You Love. Mending Life, a handbook for repairing clothes and hearts. and joyful mending, visible repairs for the perfectly imperfect things that we love. So be sure to check those out. We're going to, again, link those in the show notes. And if you liked this episode, please, please, please leave us a review. It helps us to know that you enjoyed it, and it also helps other people to find our podcast here. And this month, we are running a really fun review giveaway, and that is running through the end of May 2021. So all you need to do is leave us a review, then visit the URL that we're going to link to in the show notes to let us know that you left this review. And by doing this, you could win a year of Seamwork membership, and that is our unlimited membership, which gives you unlimited access to all of our patterns, and that's a lot of patterns. It's $180 value, so definitely worth 10 seconds of your time to write a quick review and just send us a line through this URL. Be sure to click through to the show notes and check that out. That is all that we have for you today, but we will see you again next week.
Have a great week, guys.
Bye.
See you later.
Seamwork Radio is brought to you by the Seamwork community, and you can find us at seamwork.com. If you have a story to share, send us an email at podcast@seamwork.com. We'd especially love to hear stories from those whose experiences often get left out of the conversation, whether because of race, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, age, or any other reason. Again, that's podcast@seamwork.com. You can find us on Instagram at Seamwork and Seamwork Video on YouTube. We'd love to invite you to join us at seamwork.com. We have an amazing community there, as well as new sewing patterns and classes each month for members. Podcast listeners can get 50% off our unlimited membership, which gets you unlimited downloads from our library of over 150 wardrobe-building sewing patterns. Just visit seamwork.com/go/podcast50. You can also find that link in the show notes. And if you like this podcast, please consider giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or the podcast app of your choice. It really helps other people to find the show so they can hear these stories too. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back with you soon. I'm Sari Mitnick, and this is Seamwork Radio.